Hello, everybody. Welcome to Your Capital What's Up. I'm Chuck Wiger, your area state senator, and today we're going to talk about the Minnesota Historical Society with one of their teacher educators, Jessica Ellison. Jessica Ellison, you're from Birchwood, and you're a teacher who is doing great things at the Minnesota Historical Society, so we welcome you to our show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Now, you have a number of roles that you're involved in and working with teachers and outreach and social studies and that. So why don't you tell us what you do at the Historical Society?
Sure. So I work in the education department at the Minnesota Historical Society in the K-12 Programs and Services Division. And so our job is to create resources for social studies teachers to help their instruction in the classroom. And so I am a teacher educator, and my job is to create professional development opportunities, workshops, institutes, webinars, that sort of thing for teachers. And then I also do curriculum development, so materials that they can use in their classroom with their students.
Okay.
And I've been there 11 years.
Wonderful. So is your office and your colleagues, are you right at the flagship building at the History Center?
We are, yep, downtown St. Paul.
Okay, and many of us have hopefully visited the center. It's just a great place to go. What a wonderful office you have.
Oh, I love it. Every day I come in and I feel really lucky that that's where I get to come to work every day. It's a beautiful building and situated where it is right by the cathedral and the Capitol building. It's wonderful.
Okay, and you work primarily with teachers, and the whole mission of the Historical Society is to get the message out to the general public about the importance of history. History matters,
Exactly.
as they sum it up.
Yep.
And I bet that was something that inspired you to get into this role. Tell us, why does history matter?
Oh, it's so relevant and it affects everything. It affects our daily lives. So much of what is happening today has been impacted by what's going on in the past. And so we so often hear students say history is boring, it doesn't relate to me, but you can pick anything going on in today's world, it has a connection to the past. And the more that we understand the past, the better we're going to understand where we are today and where we're going. And so I've always been a history buff ever since I was a little girl. I read the Laura Ingalls Wilder series as a little girl and loved the idea.
What inspired you to do that? So that's when it got started.
Yeah, I mean, I was in, third, fourth grade reading these books, and they're about a little girl who lived in a sod house, and who knows what that's like, and so I loved those stories. I read Anne of Green Gables and all these other books about the past. But the moment that I knew what I wanted to do in my life, I was a ninth grade student. I was doing a History Day project, which is sort of like a science fair except history. And I was doing research at the Historical Society on the Civil War. And I found a box of letters from a Civil War soldier who had marched with Sherman in Georgia, who was from my hometown of Maple Grove. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went on, because here was someone who had done something important in the past, who had walked where I walked.
Yes.
And then everything was clear. And so I've been into history since then.
Well, tell us about that journey. You were in Maple Grove, and where did you go to school?
I went to Osseo High School, and then I actually got a degree in journalism from Drake University. And Yep, in Iowa, in Des Moines, Iowa. And that was wonderful. The journalism degree has served me well, but I ended up only spending 1 year at a newspaper. I was at the St. Cloud Times. Up in St. Cloud, I was a copy editor. I was there on 9/11, which was a really interesting place to be, in a newsroom on 9/11.
Do you remember what were you doing at between 7 and 8 a.m. that day? And then you were busy the rest of the day.
I was actually waiting tables because I worked a second job, and I was waiting tables. And this was before the days of social media. And so one customer said, "Hey, did you hear that a plane hit the World Trade Center?" I said, "Oh, that's terrible." And then 5 minutes later, the other plane, and then the Pentagon. And then I got a call from my editor at the newspaper. He called me at the restaurant and said, "You need to get in here." And we worked so many hours that week, special editions. And it was, a lot of crying in the newsroom, and just a lot of, this is what we were trained to do. as journalists.
So you took the journalism degree, you had the experience, and how about that road then to teaching?
So I did journalism for a year, and then I took a break, and I went to Europe to do some traveling, and then I went back to graduate school, actually at St. Cloud State, and I got a master's degree in public history. And then it was sort of a happy circumstance of all the right things being all the right places. There was a job opening at the Historical Society in education, and because of my past with the History Day program, I knew somebody who worked there and needed an employee, and I got a job right out of graduate school, which was very exciting. So for all, there were a lot of people who said, well, what are you going to do with a history degree? And I'm happily employed.
Wonderful.
So, and I started there 2004.
Any key things in your graduate degree that you'd like to recall?
Well, I spent a lot of time at Mille Cathio State Park as a part of a big project I was doing. During the Depression, there were a lot of people who squatted there in Mille Cathio. They had nowhere else to go, and so they would take up residence, and they left behind evidence of their life. And so our job was to go and do a map of certain parts of the state park and try to map out the living site based on what was there.
Yeah.
And we found the garbage. You can tell a lot by people based on what they throw away. And so we found there were dozens and dozens of these metal jar tops that were peanut butter. And so we thought, well, were there children that lived there? So that was really exciting to get to hold history in my hand.
Yeah, just like earlier.
Yep.
Those
With the letters, exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
so you get this great opportunity with the History Center, and you were charged to do what?
So when I first started the job, I worked with the History Day program, so it really came full circle. I did the project as a student, and then I got the opportunity to work with students and teachers who were participating in the program, because it's a program where students create a project based on a theme, an annual theme, and then they compete in regional, state, and national competitions.
Yes.
And so I was there to help guide the teachers and guide the students through their learning process. Because what's really important for us is not necessarily the competition, but what do they take away from that learning experience. So I did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then I moved into my current role as a teacher educator.
We might say, too, in the role of the legislature and the Department of Education, we have standards, expectations that students meet to graduate in social studies, for example, in reading, math, science, et cetera. And your particular area, social studies, is a passion.
Yes.
Linking that with history. And you're the president now of an organization. Tell us about that for social studies.
Sure. So I'm the president of the Minnesota Council for the Social Studies, which is it's an organization made up mostly of teachers and other educators like myself, and our mission is to support, advocate for, and celebrate teaching and learning of social studies in Minnesota. And so we have an annual conference every year. That's our major event. It's in the spring. This year it's in St. Cloud in March, which is going to be really exciting. But
A nice walk down memory lane.
Exactly. Our goal is to just make social studies more accessible and to really provide social studies teachers with a voice and with resources to make sure that it's not put on the back burner. I mean, our social studies teachers in this state are so good and so passionate, and it's very important, not just the history, but the civics, the geography, the economics. It's all interconnected, and our role as a council is to really advocate and celebrate those teachers.
Okay. And what's the feedback you're getting from teachers? Because ultimately, they're going to bring this message in the classroom. We have hundreds of thousands of students in our system in the state, and we have these expectations. What are teachers telling you
about the state social studies standards?
Yes.
Well, there's
the feedback that they're getting.
Oh, sure. There's a lot of standards, and I think that can be overwhelming sometimes for the teachers and students. But what the teachers have found when they look at the standards, not only in social studies but also in English language arts, is that they're doing so much of that already. They do such a great job, and the standards are really just a way to get it on paper. But what they're saying that they need is more time to focus on social studies. They need professional development time set aside. In elementary school, we hear that there's not a whole lot of time to do social studies because the elementary teachers are generalists, and so they have to focus on a lot of different subjects. So we do hear that we need more support in the elementary for consistent social studies instruction. And the teachers in the older grades need dedicated time to get professional development so that they can improve their instruction.
Now, the standards are actually online. If people would like to see them, the Department of Education
Correct.
Would have a website if anyone wants to dive deeper into this. Does your organization comment to the department, offer suggestions on changing it, or do you look more as an implementer and how you can get teachers to be even more effective?
We do a little of both. We had people from the Minnesota Historical Society on the Standards Revision Committee back in 2011 when they were revised.
And perhaps you could just highlight a little bit about the standards or give some examples.
Sure. When they,
key ones.
The standards, the big change in 2011 was that from K to 8, the standards are grade specific.
Yes.
So kindergarten used to be a block. You can teach these standards anytime between K and 3. Now kindergarten has a specific set. First grade, second grade, all the way through 8th grade. 9 through 12, it's a block again. So schools are free to teach economics in 9th grade if they want, or in 12th grade, as long as the standards are met. But there are a series of anchor standards that carry all the way through K-12, and they build upon each other so that when a student in elementary school learns why we say the Pledge of Allegiance or who the president is, it continues to build throughout their education. So that we don't just start social studies one day out of the blue in 6th grade.
Right.
It's part of their life because it's a part of our lives every day.
Do you have a chance then to go to the schools? Or in the in-servicing, when you're working with teachers, is there meetings at the History Center? Do you go out into different regions of the state? Or is there a combination of this? And then how do you test the effectiveness?
I do a little bit of both. Most of the work that I do in workshops is at the Historical Society. But Minnesota's a big state. It takes a long time to get from Thief River Falls to St. Paul.
Yes.
And so we've been trying to go out a little bit more. This fall I was in Bemidji, St. Cloud, and Duluth to go visit with teachers from those regions. I don't get into schools a lot, which is too bad because I love to work with the students. I love to see how they learn. But that's something I would like to do more of, to see how teachers are implementing it. And whenever I do, I'm always amazed by the way that they take this standard, they turn it into an I can statement. So as a student, I can know the cause of the Civil War. And they create these amazing lessons that are really engaging for the kids. It's so exciting.
Great. And funding for your position and through the History Center comes from the state legislature, which comes from the taxpayers, which we appreciate.
Absolutely.
And I imagine there's a number of partnerships too that the Historical Society has with others.
Yes.
In delivering its overall program.
Yeah, there's mostly from the state, as you say, and then there's also the Legacy Amendment, the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, which the voters of Minnesota voted into the Constitution, an amendment, 2008, which whenever I talk to my colleagues in other states at museums, they're amazed that such a thing would have passed. Because that money, that little bit of extra sales tax money, goes to fund arts, cultural heritage, and clean water programs. And it's really a unique thing. And so that money also goes to fund positions like mine and some of the programs that we do.
Great.
And it's really been a game changer for us.
Great. History matters. We need to continue to energize people to become aware of that.
Absolutely.
And if you don't realize where you've been, you're not going to have a good handle on where you're going.
Exactly.
In terms of historical figures, past or present, is there one single person, you could name two if you needed to, but that you'd like to say, I really admired that person?
I would love to have lunch with Eleanor Roosevelt. There's so much that I admire about her, and being the legs for her husband when FDR was in the White House, and she was really focused on social justice and the rights of women and the rights of African Americans. And then after her husband's death, she continued and worked with the United Nations, and she just was a tremendous person. And I would love to just sit and talk with her for 20 minutes even.
Good. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And in addition to all of your activity as a teacher educator, working with teachers throughout the state, you're a mom.
I am.
And with 4 children, you're with your spouse.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Sure. So we have 4 kids. They're ages 8, 6, 4, and 2. So we call it our little zoo, because it is. It's crazy. And they go to White Bear Schools, which we love. My husband, Matt, is the executive chef at Muffaletta, which is a restaurant in St. Anthony Park in St. Paul.
Yeah, it's a great place.
It's wonderful. He does really great stuff with food, a lot of local farmers. And we've lived in Birchwood for 3 years. We were St. Paulites before, and there are some things we really miss about St. Paul, but we've come to love this area, and being so close to the lake has been really wonderful. So we keep very, very busy at our house.
Yes, and with your work in St. Paul, you can combine all that, and it is a greater East Metro in many respects, so you can get the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Perhaps so, too. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for sharing your insights about the importance of history, what you're involved in. Any concluding remarks you'd like to share with our viewers?
I just want to say that I think history is so important, and if you have an opportunity to find a way to support history and the social studies in Minnesota, I think our students are going to be better for it, and we appreciate the support that we get from you and the legislature to make sure that social studies will always matter for our kids.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica Ellison. You're doing great things.
Thank you.
History matters.
Yes, it does.
And viewers, if you'd like to learn more about the Historical Society, please check out their website, go visit, learn more, volunteer. It's just a great investment for the future, and by giving us greater insights in the past. You couldn't give a greater present, and that was one of the things I gave just for the kids and grandkids, a membership that is very portable throughout the state for venues. I'll just put in that pitch. It's a great place to visit.
Absolutely.
So, if you have questions of me, I invite you to call me. My cell phone is 651-770-0283, or you can call me at the Capitol. That number is 651-296-6820. With Jessica Ellison, I'm Chuck Wiger. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you so much. That was
Okay.
great.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I forgot to grab a picture of Marcy, but I'll get you a picture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.